All right, so today we're going to be looking at clinical trials,
Mm-hmm.
specifically how researchers actually find people for these studies.
Yeah.
It's, I think, probably a lot more complicated than most people realize.
It is. It really is. It's
Yeah.
a fascinating area. And, it's really the foundation for all medical progress, testing new treatments to see if they're safe, if they're effective.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Finding the right participants is one of the biggest challenges that researchers face.
Mhm.
In fact, some studies have shown that up to 80% of clinical trials
Wow.
struggle to meet their recruitment goals on time.
80%.
80%.
That's a huge number.
It is.
I mean, it makes sense, though, right? Because these
Yeah.
trials are so specific.
Yeah.
You can't just have anybody.
You can't.
Yeah.
They're designed to answer very specific questions.
Mm-hmm.
So the participants really need to fit a very specific profile
Yeah.
to make sure that the results are meaningful
Right.
and applicable.
Okay, so before we get into the how of recruitment,
Okay.
maybe we can kind of step back a little bit and explain to our listener
Sure.
the different phases of a clinical trial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because our source material lays out 4 main phases.
It does.
And I don't know about you, but I always find it helpful to kind of have that framework
Absolutely.
in mind before.
It's like climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
You have to conquer each stage before you move on to the next one.
That's
so
right.
phase I, that's like base camp.
Okay.
It's all about safety.
Okay.
You have a small group of volunteers, maybe 20 to 80 people,
Okay.
who are trying the treatment for the very first time.
Hmm.
And at this stage, the researchers are really looking at, dosage, side effects, just making sure that it's safe to move forward with the research.
Safe for humans, basically.
Safe for humans, exactly.
Okay, so small group.
Small group,
Big emphasis on safety.
big emphasis on safety.
What happens if everything looks good in phase I?
Well, then we start moving up the mountain
Okay.
to phase 2.
Okay.
And here, the group size increases, maybe a couple hundred people,
Mm-hmm.
and the focus shifts a bit more.
Okay.
Now, the researchers are starting to look more closely at whether the treatment is actually effective
Okay.
for its intended purpose.
Right.
But of course, they're still keeping a close eye on safety as well.
Got it. So safety first and then efficacy.
Exactly.
Sounds like, throughout these phases, it's just gradually building confidence
Absolutely.
in the treatment.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And then comes the big expedition, phase 3.
Okay.
This is where thousands of participants are involved.
Thousands.
Thousands.
Okay.
Like massive multi-site studies
Wow.
where researchers are confirming everything from the previous phases,
Mm-hmm.
comparing the new treatment to existing options,
Right.
and really making sure that it's ready for prime time.
So that's a huge jump from the first phase,
It is
from like 20 to 80 people to now thousands of people.
a massive undertaking.
Yeah, I can only imagine the logistics involved in that.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even stop there.
Oh.
Even after a treatment is approved
Mm-hmm.
and is available to the public,
Yeah.
there's still phase 4.
Oh, there's more?
There's more.
Wow.
And these trials monitor the treatment long term.
Okay.
They're looking for any rare side effects that might pop up over time,
Oh.
or how well it works in different groups of people.
So it's like, okay, it's been approved, it's out there, but we're still going to watch it.
Exactly. We're going to keep watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about making sure we have a complete picture
Yeah.
of its safety and effectiveness even years down the line.
So even after a drug hits the market, the research continues.
It does.
It really highlights how thorough the process is.
It's a very thorough process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So given all of these phases
Right.
and, the need for such large numbers of participants,
Yeah.
I am really curious about how researchers actually find the right people for each trial, because I imagine it's not as simple as just putting out a general call for volunteers.
It's much more targeted than that.
Right.
And remember those specific requirements we talked about?
Yeah.
Researchers use something called inclusion and exclusion criteria
Yeah.
to define exactly who can participate in a trial.
Right. So our source material mentions those.
Yes.
But to be honest, it's a little, I don't know, it's complicated.
It can be a little bit.
Yeah. Can you break it down for our listener a little bit?
Yeah. Think of it like a very detailed recipe.
Okay.
You need the right ingredients in the right amounts for the dish to turn out correctly.
Okay.
So inclusion criteria are the characteristics a person must have to be eligible for the trial.
Okay.
So things like age, gender, specific diagnoses, or even lifestyle factors. Exclusion criteria are characteristics that would disqualify someone from participating, like having certain other health condition or taking certain medications.
So it's all about ensuring that whoever's in this trial really fits the specific research question that's being asked.
Yeah, it's about controlling those variables to make sure that the results are reliable.
But I mean, those criteria sound incredibly specific.
They are, and for good reason.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say a trial is testing a new medication for early-stage breast cancer.
Okay.
The inclusion criteria might specify that participants must be female, between certain ages, have a confirmed diagnosis of a specific type of breast cancer, and haven't undergone chemotherapy yet.
That's super specific.
It is.
Yeah.
The exclusion criteria might rule out individuals with other serious health conditions or those who are pregnant or breastfeeding.
Okay.
So you can see how it gets very, very...
It's starting to make sense to me now why recruitment is such a big challenge.
Yes.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Exactly.
Right.
It can be very challenging.
Yeah, to find people that fit that exact profile.
And it gets even more complicated.
Oh, boy.
When you consider the ethical implications.
Right.
Because every recruitment strategy has to prioritize the well-being of the potential participants.
Of course.
That's where those institutional review boards, or IRBs, come into play.
IRBs, now I've heard that term before.
Yes.
But to be honest with you, I don't fully understand what they do.
Okay, so think of them as the guardians of ethical research.
Okay.
So these boards are made up of experts in various fields, and they carefully review every aspect of a clinical trial, including the recruitment plans, to make sure that everything is ethical and protects the rights and well-being of the participants.
So they're like the ethical watchdogs.
Exactly.
Making sure everything's on the up and up.
They have the power to approve, reject, or request changes to any part of the trial.
So they have a lot of power.
They do, and they're crucial for ensuring that the research is conducted responsibly and that the participants' safety and rights are always prioritized.
So we have these very specific criteria for participants.
Yes.
And then we have this system in place
Yes.
to make sure that the recruitment is ethical.
Right.
But how do researchers actually go about finding these folks?
Right.
Do they just put up flyers at the local coffee shop?
Well, some methods might feel a little bit old school.
Okay.
Like placing ads in newspapers or distributing flyers in relevant healthcare settings.
That does seem a little old school.
A little bit.
Especially given how specific those criteria are.
Yeah, right.
Like how effective can a general flyer really be in finding someone with, a very specific type of breast cancer?
That's why researchers have a whole toolbox of recruitment strategies, ranging from those traditional methods to cutting-edge technologies.
Ooh, cutting-edge technology.
That's where it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
But before we jump into those, I think it's worth talking a little bit more about those more traditional approaches.
Yeah, let's back up a bit. I'm just curious, besides flyers and newspapers, what other traditional approaches do they use?
One common method is collaborating with healthcare providers. Because doctors are often the first point of contact for patients. Yeah. So they can play a really crucial role in identifying potential participants.
That makes sense because they already have a relationship with the patient, right?
They do.
And they already understand their medical history.
Exactly. But it's not as simple as just handing out referrals.
Right.
Remember, informed consent.
Right. The patient's right to fully understand what they're getting into.
Exactly.
But honestly, I feel like we kind of glossed over that a little bit earlier. Can we maybe unpack that a bit more?
Sure.
What does informed consent actually look like in practice?
So it's all about empowering the potential participant to make an educated and involuntary decision about whether or not to participate.
So researchers are obligated to provide comprehensive information about the trial in a clear and understandable way. This includes things like the purpose, the procedures, the potential risks and benefits, and the participants' rights.
So it's more than just signing a form, right?
It's much more than that. It's about making sure they understand the implications of participating. They need to be able to ask questions, get clarification, and ultimately make a decision without any pressure or coercion.
So back to those referrals
Then
from healthcare providers.
Yes.
How do they ensure that that potential participant really understands the trial before they agree to be referred?
So doctors play a crucial role in explaining the basics
Okay.
and ensuring that the patient has a general understanding, but the ultimate responsibility lies with the research team.
Okay.
So they will have in-depth conversations
Right.
with the potential participants.
Provide them with detailed information sheets.
Okay.
Answer any questions that they may have.
And remember those IRBs?
Yes,
They also review all of the informed consent materials.
they do.
Okay.
To make sure they are
Yeah.
clear, comprehensive, and easy to understand.
So those IRBs are involved
Every step of the way.
at every stage.
Every step of the way, from the recruitment plan to the informed consent process.
It sounds like there are a lot of checks and balances in place
There are.
to protect participants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ethical considerations are woven into every aspect of clinical research,
Yeah.
and recruitment is no exception.
So we've covered those referrals from healthcare providers
Yes.
and those more traditional methods like flyers and ads.
Right.
But I'm still really curious about those cutting-edge technologies that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
How are those changing the game of patient recruitment?
So that's where things get really interesting.
Oh.
We're seeing a shift from broad outreach to much more targeted approaches.
Okay.
So think online platforms,
Okay.
social media campaigns, patient registries, even sophisticated algorithms.
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Algorithms. That sounds a bit like...
It does. It can sound that way, but
Yeah.
it's all about data analysis.
So how does that actually work?
So researchers can use algorithms to sift through vast amounts of information,
Okay.
like electronic health records or patient databases, to identify individuals who might meet the criteria
Okay.
for a particular trial.
So instead of casting a wide net
Yes,
and hoping you catch a couple eligible participants,
you're using data to hone in on the most likely candidates.
you're being much more targeted.
Exactly, much more targeted.
Yeah.
And that can significantly increase the efficiency of recruitment,
Right.
which saves both time and resources.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
But all this talk about data and algorithms,
Yes.
it makes me think about privacy concerns.
Right.
Are there safeguards in place to protect patient information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Data privacy is paramount.
Okay.
So researchers are bound by very strict regulations, and any data used for recruitment purposes is de-identified and anonymized.
So no one's going to be receiving targeted ads
No.
based on their internet search history.
No, not at all.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
The data used is strictly medical information,
Yeah.
and it's been stripped of any identifying details.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm still curious about those other
Yes.
cutting-edge approaches
All right.
that you mentioned. Like,
Carol.
how are social media platforms being used for patient recruitment?
So it's all about meeting people where they are.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Millions of people spend hours each day
Yep.
scrolling through social media.
Yeah, that's true.
So why not use that to raise awareness about clinical trials
Right.
and connect with potential participants?
I guess that makes sense, but wouldn't those ads just get lost
Right.
in the sea of,
Right.
cat videos and political rants?
Well, that's where targeted advertising comes in.
Okay.
Platforms like Facebook and Twitter
Yeah.
allow researchers to target their ads to very specific demographics,
Okay.
interests,
Mm-hmm.
and even health conditions.
Oh, wow.
So if a trial is looking for individuals with a particular type of diabetes,
Right.
they can create an ad that specifically targets people who have expressed interest in diabetes-related content.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
It's very targeted.
It sounds like those algorithms are really
They are.
changing the game when it comes to outreach.
They are, yeah.
Okay, what about those patient registries you mentioned earlier?
Right.
How do those fit into the picture?
So patient registries are another powerful tool.
Okay.
They're essentially databases where individuals with specific conditions
Yep.
can voluntarily provide their information and express interest in participating in research.
So it's kind of like a matchmaking service.
It is. It's like a matchmaking service for clinical trials.
Okay.
So instead of researchers having to search for needles in a haystack,
Yeah.
they can access a pool of individuals
Right.
who are already interested and potentially eligible.
That makes a lot of sense.
It really streamlines the process
Yeah.
and makes it easier for both the researchers and the potential participants to connect.
This is also fascinating.
It is.
But I can't help but wonder about the human element in all of this.
Right.
With all this technology, does the personal touch get lost?
That's a great question, and it's something that researchers are very mindful of.
Okay.
While technology can enhance the recruitment process,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that we're dealing with real people who are making significant decisions about their health.
Okay.
So finding that balance between leveraging technology and maintaining that personal connection is crucial.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about how you use it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where the role of communication and empathy becomes even more important.
Right.
Researchers need to be skilled communicators, able to explain complex concepts in a way that is understandable and relatable.
Right.
And they also need to be empathetic listeners, sensitive to the concerns and anxieties that potential participants might have.
It sounds like patient recruitment is a lot more than just finding warm bodies.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's about building relationships, fostering trust, and ultimately empowering individuals to make informed decisions about their health.
And that brings us to another important aspect of recruitment.
Yes.
Which is addressing those challenges and hesitations that people might have about participating in clinical trials.
Absolutely.
Because we've talked about the how,
Yeah.
but what about the why? Or even the why not?
That's a great point.
You know, what motivates people to participate?
Yes.
What are some of the barriers that they might face?
Those are really important questions.
Yeah.
And exploring them will give us a much deeper understanding of the human side of clinical research.
This has been incredibly insightful already.
Good.
But I think we're just scratching the surface here.
I agree.
So maybe we can delve into those motivations and barriers
a
little bit more after a quick break.
Sounds good.
All right. So we've talked about all these different methods for finding people, right, for these trials. But I'm really curious about what's going on in people's minds. Like when they're actually considering, you know, taking part in a clinical trial.
Right.
What are some of the things that might hold them back?
Well, I think one big one is just fear.
Yeah.
You know, the unknown can be pretty scary, especially when it comes to your health.
Yeah.
Some people worry about potential side effects, especially with new treatments that haven't been on the market very long.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You're basically putting your trust in a treatment that's still being studied. That takes a lot of courage, I think.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for some people, you know, there might be concerns about the time commitment involved.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Clinical trials often require multiple visits, tests, procedures, which can disrupt your daily routine and even require taking time off work.
I can imagine that being a major barrier.
It can be.
For a lot of people.
Especially people with demanding jobs or family responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about overcoming that fear of the unknown. It's about the practical realities.
Absolutely.
Too. Are there any financial implications, too?
There can be.
Yeah.
Even with, you know, compensation for travel expenses or lost wages. Some people might just not be able to afford to participate.
Yeah, I hadn't really considered that.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's really a lot to think about.
It is.
For people.
It is. And for some people, there might even be deeper psychological barriers at play.
Okay.
You know, some individuals might be hesitant to kind of embrace that patient label.
Oh, interesting.
Or feel uncomfortable with the idea of being experimented on.
Yeah.
So it really is a deeply personal decision.
Yeah.
Influenced by, you know, individual beliefs and experiences.
That's a really great point. It really highlights how personal of a decision this is for people.
And that's why it's so important for researchers to approach recruitment with sensitivity and empathy.
Right.
You know, it's not just about checking boxes and meeting quotas. It's about really understanding the complexities of human motivation and addressing concerns in a way that respects individual autonomy.
It sounds like there's a real art.
There is.
To patient recruitment.
It's a balance between the scientific rigor of the trial and the human element of connecting with those potential participants.
And one of the key elements in building that connection, I imagine, is trust.
Absolutely. Trust is crucial.
Yeah. How does that play into recruitment?
Well, imagine you're being asked to participate in a trial for a new medication.
Okay.
You'd want to feel confident that the researchers have your best interests at heart, right?
Sure.
You want to know that they're being transparent about the risks and benefits, that they're prioritizing your safety.
Absolutely.
And that trust is especially crucial for individuals from communities that have historically been marginalized or mistreated by the medical system.
It makes you wonder, how much do those past injustices
Absolutely.
affect people's willingness to participate?
They have a lasting impact.
Right.
They do.
Yeah.
So building trust requires more than just providing information.
Yeah.
It requires acknowledging those past injustices, actively listening to community concerns, and demonstrating a genuine commitment to equity and inclusion.
So it's not just about, here are the facts. It's about building a relationship.
It is. It's about building bridges.
Yeah.
Not just presenting facts and figures.
And one way to build those bridges, I imagine, is by involving members of the community.
Exactly.
In the research process itself.
Yes, that's a great point.
So how does that work?
So some researchers are now creating community advisory boards where individuals from the target population can provide input on the trial design.
Oh, interesting.
The recruitment materials, and even the informed consent process.
So they're really getting a voice.
They are.
In shaping the research.
And that helps to ensure that the research is relevant to the community and that the messaging resonates with potential participants.
It's like saying, we value your input.
Exactly.
We want to make sure this is designed for you.
We want to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure this trial is designed in a way that addresses your specific needs and concerns.
And that goes a long way, I imagine, in building trust.
It does.
And making people feel like
they're
part of something.
It fosters a sense of ownership.
Yeah. Over
the research.
It sounds like there's a real shift happening.
I think there is.
In patient recruitment. A movement towards more collaborative and community-centered approaches.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being ethically responsible. It's also about making the research itself more robust and relevant.
So how so?
Well, if you're only recruiting participants from a very narrow slice of the population, your findings might not be generalizable to the broader community.
So you don't really know if it's going to work for everybody.
Right. But by involving diverse perspectives from the outset, you're more likely to design a trial that reflects the real world and produces results that are applicable to a wider range of people.
So it's not just about being fair. It's about the research itself.
Exactly.
Being more accurate.
More accurate, more impactful.
Okay.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect of recruitment. Which is addressing the specific challenges of recruiting diverse participants.
Yeah, because I imagine that poses
a
whole other
set
of hurdles. What are some of the key considerations there?
Well, I think one important factor is cultural sensitivity. Different communities have different beliefs and attitudes toward health research and even the concept of volunteering for a clinical trial.
Right, like what it even means to be in a trial.
Exactly.
Okay.
So a one-size-fits-all approach to recruitment just won't work.
It's got to be tailored.
It has to be tailored.
To the different communities.
It does. You need to tailor your messaging and your outreach efforts to resonate with the specific cultural values and norms of the community that you're trying to reach.
But, I mean, beyond cultural sensitivity, are there any other, practical considerations?
There are.
Yeah.
For example, language barriers can be a major obstacle.
Yeah, of course.
You know, if your recruitment materials are only available in English, you're automatically excluding individuals who speak other languages.
You're really limiting your pool there.
You are.
Wow. Okay, so translation is important.
Translation is critical.
Okay.
And even providing interpreters to make sure that everyone has equal access to information about the trial.
And then even things like transportation.
Yes, logistical barriers are a big consideration.
Right.
You know, some individuals might not have reliable transportation or face challenges in taking time off work or finding childcare.
So it's more than just, hey, here's the information.
It is.
It's how do we get you here?
It's about removing those practical obstacles
Yeah.
that might prevent people from participating.
So that might be offering flexible schedules.
It could be.
Providing transportation assistance.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Even conducting some aspects of the trial remotely.
Oh, interesting.
Using telehealth technologies.
Wow. So really getting creative.
Getting creative with it.
Yeah. It's about making the trial itself accessible, and inclusive.
And that's where I imagine that concept of patient-centric research comes in.
Exactly.
Okay, now what does that mean?
So patient-centric research
Yeah.
is a philosophy that puts the patient at the heart of the research process.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that patients are not just subjects.
Mm-hmm.
They're partners in the research journey.
So it's about giving them a voice.
Giving them a voice, absolutely.
Yeah.
Empowering them.
Yeah.
To be active participants in the research that affects their lives.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
It does.
Because who better to understand the needs and concerns of patients? Nobody.
Than the patients themselves.
Exactly. And by involving patients in the process, you build trust.
Yeah.
You address concerns proactively.
Okay.
And you ensure that the research is truly patient-centered.
So it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
For everybody.
For everybody involved.
But how is that actually happening?
So there are many different approaches.
Yeah.
Some researchers are creating patient advisory boards to provide input on trial design.
Okay.
Others are using social media platforms to engage with patients and gather feedback.
Okay.
And some are even training patients to become research advocates.
Oh, wow.
To help educate their communities about clinical trials.
Yeah.
It's shifting that power dynamic.
Shifting the power.
Recognizing the expertise and value that patients bring to the table.
And as that trend continues, I imagine we're just going to see more and more creative ways
absolutely
to get patients involved.
More creative and innovative ways to engage patients in research.
This has been incredibly illuminating. We've talked about the evolution of patient recruitment, the ethical considerations.
Yes.
We've even looked into the future a little bit of this really fascinating field.
It is a fascinating field.
It's clear that patient recruitment is so much more.
It is.
Than just finding bodies to fill trial slots.
That much more.
It's about human stories,
yes,
ethical considerations,
absolutely,
and just this constant evolution of technology and innovation.
It's a complex and ever-changing landscape.
It is.
But it's also incredibly exciting.
It is, yeah.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to leave our listener with a few key takeaways.
Okay, I'm all ears. Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Yeah, but you know, I think what really stands out to me is this shift that you mentioned towards patient-centric research.
Absolutely.
It feels like a whole new way of thinking about clinical trials.
It really is. It really is. For a long time, research operated under this kind of we know best mentality. You know, where scientists design the trials, and patients were simply expected to comply.
Yeah, be a good little subject.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But thankfully, we're starting to recognize that the most valuable insights often come from the patients themselves.
It makes you wonder how many potentially groundbreaking treatments you know, might have been delayed or even abandoned.
Yeah.
Because researchers weren't really tapping into that patient perspective.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
And that's why these initiatives like patient advisory boards and community engagement efforts are so crucial.
Yeah.
You know, they give patients a seat at the table, allowing them to share their experiences, voice their concerns, and help shape the research in a way that truly reflects their needs.
It's like we're finally acknowledging that patients are the experts.
Exactly.
In their own lives and their own health.
They are the experts in their own experiences.
Yeah.
And when you empower patients in that way, you not only make the research more relevant, but you also build trust and foster a sense of ownership.
Which I imagine makes people more willing to participate in trials.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When people feel like they're part of the process, they're more likely to see the value in participating.
Okay.
And that can even have a ripple effect, you know, encouraging others in their communities to consider getting involved as well.
You know, that makes me think about something you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
About storytelling.
Yes.
And how important that is for patient recruitment.
It is.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. You know, sharing the personal experiences of individuals who have participated in clinical trials can be incredibly powerful.
Okay.
You know, it humanizes the process. It addresses fears in a way that's relatable.
Right.
And it shows the real world impact that research can have on people's lives.
It's kind of like those testimonials
It is.
you see for products and services.
Yes, exactly.
But with much higher stakes.
Exactly, exactly. Hearing those firsthand accounts from people who have actually gone through the process can make a world of difference.
Okay.
You know, it can help potential participants envision themselves in that role and see that it's not as daunting as they might have imagined.
And it highlights that these trials aren't just about collecting data.
Right.
It's about,
They're about improving lives.
improving lives.
Yeah.
Making a difference.
Making a real difference in the world.
And that brings us back to the why of patient recruitment.
Yes.
Right? The reason why all of this matters.
Exactly.
Because these clinical trials, this is the engine of medical progress.
They are how we develop new treatments, test new therapies, and ultimately improve the health and well-being of individuals and communities.
And all of that hinges on people's willingness to participate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without those brave volunteers, without those everyday heroes who step forward to contribute to science, medical research would simply grind to a halt.
It's humbling to think about.
It is.
All the people who have participated in these trials throughout history that have gotten us to where we are today.
Yeah, they paved the way for the treatments and cures we have today.
And it's a reminder that each of us can actually play a role.
We can.
In shaping the future of medicine.
Absolutely.
Whether it's participating in a trial, spreading awareness, supporting research efforts, every little bit counts.
Every contribution counts.
This has been amazing.
Good.
It's given me a whole new perspective on clinical trials.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's so much more than just science and data,
It is.
It's about human stories.
Yes.
Ethical considerations, this collective effort to advance medical knowledge.
It really is a remarkable endeavor.
It is, and I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And to our listener,
yes.
Thank you for tuning in.
We hope you learned something new today.
And we hope to see you again soon for another deep dive.
Absolutely.